LGB. 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 LGB.
They say LGB everywhere I go. LGB. What it means, I don't know. LGB. Whatever it is. LGB. Come on, help me, please. Please.
Alrighty then.
Thank you. LGB.
That's let's go, Brandon, right?
LGB.
This means let's go, Brandon.
No. LGB.
Sounds like let's go, Brandon, I guess.
LGB. All right. Let's go, Brandon.
I am Cornholio.
Chant LGB. Right wing and left wing. LGB. Go, you know the thing. LGB. If you don't sing that back. LGB. And you ain't black. LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
FJB. Let's go, Brandon.
I'm Joe Biden, and I forgot this message.
Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this January 23rd, 2024 at 9:13 a.m. Central Standard Time. One piece today. Really excited about bringing this one to you. It's David Icke's, well, now nemesis, James Delingpole, explaining why he didn't trust him. The piece is entitled David Icke's Gingerbread Cottage. And I haven't read it. I've skimmed it, of course. I know it's going to be good. But I'm going to be presenting it to you today. And that finishes a two-parter that he did on his live show with David Icke that went off the rails really quickly. Before we do that, though, don't forget to go to www.angelpaste.com to get the best lotion the world has ever known. Invented by my sister Barbara, manufactured by her at her home in Spring, Texas. It consists only of food-grade plant oils extracted via cold, non-chemical processes from God's own flora, and the results are amazing. It's got none of those preservatives and drying agents that other lotions have, designed to promote reuse. It just takes a little bit of this stuff, just a dab, a dime's worth I put on my face every day, and the results are absolutely amazing. Guys, we are seeing age spots fading. We're seeing eczema and psoriasis being dramatically improved. We're seeing sunburns being prevented. We're seeing dead skin tumbling off, even though there's nothing abrasive about this product. It is amazing. So go to www.angelpaste.com. Use promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. And if you get 3 or more bottles, you get free shipping. Angel Paste. Your skin will drink it up. All right, let's begin. From Delingpole.substack.com, David Icke's Gingerbread Cottage. Icke has been right on so much. But here's why I don't trust him. There is a moment in my live show with David Icke where I completely lose it. I know why you haven't been killed for saying the stuff you say, I yell at him. It's because you're one of them. You're part of the trap. It was something like that anyway. You'll have to check out the podcast yourself. I've now de-paywalled it. From Delingpole.substack.com, David Icke, December 9th, 2023. Finally, in lavish Technicolor, the confrontation you've all been waiting for. Delingpole v. Icke. It wasn't meant to be this way. The plan was for it to be an entertaining conversation between two truthers about their respective journeys down the rabbit hole, but something went badly wrong. Listen in to decide for yourself what the problem was. Full story at Delingpole.substack.com to hear the exact words. But what I do vividly remember as I made the accusation was how shocked I felt to be saying it. I'd begun the evening expecting that we were going to end it as good mates. Instead, here I was, effectively accusing one of the world's most red-pilled influencers of working for the enemy. This was the point in the evening where I realized I'd lost about half my audience. I could actually hear their groans of disappointment and disbelief. How dare I question the integrity of the heroic, magnificent, and sacrosanct guru who first led them down the rabbit hole and who has been proved right about so much since. Contrary to popular belief, I don't enjoy confrontation, but I'm definitely not shy of giving it back if I'm feeling provoked. Icke had already irked me mightily with his sludgy monologues, his inability to answer a question straight, and his reluctance to hold anything resembling a conversation. The final straw, though, was when he started making sneering references to my religion. Now, I certainly hadn't gone on stage intending to defend Christianity to a known atheist. I mentioned my own faith en passant, just because I was starting to get a bit frustrated by Icke's vagueness on the nature of his philosophical/religious outlook. Icke is very good at telling you stridently what the deal is, that we're all living in a simulation, that there are these demons feeding on our energy, and so on. What he is much less able to do, it seems to me, is to provide a persuasive account as to why we should believe him. And I don't think I was being unreasonably demanding here. If you are going to travel around the world, appearing on stage to adoring audiences, expounding a particular worldview, then surely it behooves you to be able to justify it. For me, it would be the work of moments to explain why the Bible narrative, that we were created in the image of God who imbued us with a moral compass and a yearning for truth and beauty, makes emotional and intellectual sense, and I've got texts to back it up. All I wanted from Icke was his own apologia for why it is that he thinks what he thinks. But Icke either wouldn't or couldn't deliver. This, for me, was a massive tell. I'd started out, as I do with all my podcast guests, wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt, but now there were red flags all over the place. Why? When talking about truly monstrous evils, like the satanic bloodline families and how they torture and kill children in order to harvest their adrenochrome, did he sound so curiously unmoved? Why, given his oft-stated view that only through love can we transcend the simulation, was he so viciously antithetical to Christianity? Could it be that the ugly rumors about Icke, which I'd been so careful not to investigate beforehand, might actually have a grain of truth in them? You'll find the answers to these questions in 2 revealing videos. Perhaps I should have watched them before I did the live event. Then again, had I done so, I would have canceled the whole thing, for what they tell us about Icke does not make me warm to him or trust him. Icke is a theosophist, a New Ager, essentially, though he might not use that specific term, a Luciferian. Now, that might not sound too worrying if you don't know what those labels mean, so let's spell it out. David Icke shares the same religious belief system as the wicked master rulers he has spent the last 30 years supposedly exposing. I'm surprised by how little this is talked about or even understood in awake circles, but I think that may be partly a function of the way Icke markets himself. If you're one of his 500,000 Twitter followers, for example, you get edgy, incisive commentary on everything from Israel-Gaza to the credibility of Alex Jones and Elon Musk. This is the Icke of the popular imagination, unafraid to go where others will not dare, completely on the money with his predictions of what the New World Order will do next, a martyr to the cause of truths that they just don't want you to hear. I fell for this myself. It was the whole reason I had him on the podcast. Though it's true, as I admitted in our stage show, that I'd never read any of Icke's books, I know lots of people who have and who credit him as their main inspiration for much of what they know about the machinations of the Illuminati. And then there's that video, which I did see, showing Icke at least 10 years ago predicting with uncanny prescience all the things that have come to pass, from the fake pandemic and poisonous vaccines to the menace of digital ID. How could someone so right about so many things that matter possibly not be one of the good guys? What I now realize is that David Icke is a game of two halves. There's David Icke, the red-pilled truth warrior with whom it's hard to disagree on much. But there's also David Icke, the new ager, whose laborious, dogmatic, third-hand ruminations on the true nature of existence deserve much more scrutiny than they generally get from his devotedly cultish audiences. For chapter and verse on the latter, I highly recommend this deep dive investigation by Chris White, which quotes closely from Icke's written work, interviews, and stage lectures. It is called David Icke, Where Did He Get His Theories? Though Icke's position on some issues has shifted over the years, he used to claim that he conversed regularly with Jesus. Now he claims Jesus never existed, for example. The essence of his spiritual philosophy remains much the same as it was over 30 years ago, when the information was fed him by a spirit guide, an ascended master called Rakorsky. Rakorsky, it turns out, is not some random guru from the ether who chose on a whim to confer his wisdom on a former Hereford United goalkeeper. He also happens to be a key figure in the automatic writing and inspiration of Alice Bailey, founder of the Luciferium, the clue's in the name, Lucis Trust, and herself a student of Madame Blavatsky, the Russian mystic, likely a complete charlatan, who in the late 19th century established a hugely fashionable new religion called Theosophy. Theosophy, a mishmash of occultism and Eastern philosophy, mutated into what we now know as the New Age movement. Most people think of the New Age, if at all, as an amiably batty phenomenon, now largely defunct, that surfaced sometime in the late 60s and gave us the musical Hair. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The more mystical elements of the hippie movement, Shirley MacLaine on a beach shouting to the waves, I am God, shops selling crystals, and so on. But far from going away, the New Age is now so well assimilated in Western culture, it has become a permanent fixture. Yoga, mindfulness, the whale music playing during your Reiki or aromatherapy treatment, the notion that love and hate vibrate at different frequencies, meditation, ashram retreats. I'm not religious, but I'm definitely spiritual. We're, most of us, part of the New Age these days without even knowing it. Having dabbled with quite a few of the above in my time, I can perfectly well appreciate their appeal. The problem with the New Age is that it's a bit like the nice old lady with the cats who couldn't be more warm or helpful, but turns out to be the one who wrote the poison pen letters which destroyed the village. That is, beneath its apparently benign, wise, professedly loving exterior is a core of ruthlessness, intolerance, and malignity. Even discerning, awake people often fail to grasp this. Indeed, the New Age might have been tailor-made for the awake community in particular because it appeals to their instinctive distrust of the system, their sense that there's so much more to this world than what we've been told, their feeling that something radical needs to change if we are to escape from the current paradigm, and also to their heartfelt belief that more than anything, what we need right now is peace, love, and unity. The New Age appears to be the answer to all this and more. It tells of the dawning of a collective consciousness which will free us from the shackles and superstitions of organized religion, most especially Christianity, which it sees as the main obstacle, and will enable us to maximize our true potential by achieving the latent Godhead which resides within us all. Sounds great, right? I mean, what could be cooler than discovering that you, yes, little old you, are actually a god? And the only reason you didn't realize this is that all pesky religion you had rammed down your throat when you were a child, Christianity being by far the worst, led you up the garden path. But now you're in on the secret that the world's elites have known for centuries. Finally, you can escape the Matrix and save the world, just like Neo and Harry Potter and Luke Skywalker did. The people who made those movies knew. By achieving that state of divine wisdom, which some call gnosis. Well, if this is all true, then clearly it's the way to go. But how do we know it's not just another trap, what Christians would consider to be a satanic ploy, designed to lure us away from the only true form of salvation offered by Jesus? The answer is that we cannot know, not with any certainty. So I feel in no position to judge any of those myriad awake types who've gone down the New Age path or variants thereon, such as Gnosticism, because they might yet be right and I might be proved a gullible idiot. What I can say, though, with absolute certainty, is that the spiritual/philosophical worldview preached by David Icke is utterly incompatible with the Christian one. If one of them is correct, then the other one isn't. It's a zero-sum game. But you'd be amazed how many awake people are oblivious to this fact, as I discovered in the aftermath of our event. You and David have so much more in common than you realize. Well-meaning people kept telling me, you can't quite agree on terms, but essentially you're saying the same thing. No, we are not. Really, we are not. We are talking about polar opposites. From the Christian perspective, Icke's philosophy is exactly what we were warned about in Genesis 3:5, when the serpent tempts Eve in the Garden of Eden to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge. He claims, "For God does know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods." You can dismiss the Genesis account of man's fall as a fairy story if you wish. But believing Christians do not, and nor, perhaps more pertinently, do the people who run the world. The key difference between them is that the cabal, or the predator class, the Illuminati, call them what you will, see the serpent not as the enemy, but as mankind's benefactor, the bringer of knowledge, who freed man from the tyranny of ignorance with which a cruel and capricious God held him prisoner. In the cabal's version of events, in other words, Satan or Lucifer is the good guy, and he is also in the New Age belief system, which Icke claims to despise. It is an emotional wreck with a crystal in its hand, but yet embodies. At our live show, Icke sought to present our clash as one between my religious dogma on the one hand and, on the other hand, his enlightened, non-judgmental, free-thinking, hard-won, deeply researched insight. This was slippery of him. The New Age may not be too keen to admit it, but it is at least as much a form of religious dogma as Christianity is. It just uses all of that airy-fairy talk of raised consciousness and oneness with the universe and so on to disguise its true purpose, the age-old Luciferian mission of abolishing God. Any doubts on this score can be cleared up by glancing at the works of Madame Blavatsky or her acolyte Alice Bailey, whence much of Icke's spiritual philosophy is derived. For more details, watch this video by E511 Ministries. So, which version of events do you trust? In the Christian one, God created man in his image, gave him dominion over a world of exquisite beauty, then sent his only Son to redeem man for his sins since the fall, which was engineered by the enemy of creation, Satan, or Lucifer. In the Ickean version of events, the wonders of creation are an illusion. Man is but an NPC in a gigantic video game. There is no good and evil, only consciousness, and the God of the Bible is a malevolent control freak from whose shackles we can free ourselves once we realize that we, not him, are the true gods. Both propositions are plausible. For me, the decision comes down to which side has the most persuasive evidence. Of course, I'm aware that there are all manner of conspiracy theory takes on the Bible, everything from the integrity of the translations and the role of Paul to the behavior of the church since. Even so, I think it requires quite an imaginative leap to believe that Icke's sources of authority for his claims, a mix of personal revelation provided by entities from another realm, sundry texts and interviews of questionable reliability, are more trustworthy. I'll give you one example of where I think Icke fails badly on this score. It comes from his book, The Biggest Secret, from the year 2000, the one with the lizard-headed royals, in a passage which pours scorn on those foolish enough to take the New Testament literally. Here it is. Quote, Horus was the son of God in Egypt. He was derived from the Babylonian Tammuz and in turn provided another blueprint for the later Jesus. The connections are devastating for the credibility of the Christian church. Jesus was the light of the world. Horus was the light of the world. Jesus said he was the way, the truth, and the light. Horus said he was the truth and the life. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, the house of bread. Horus was born in Anu, the place of bread. Jesus was the good shepherd. Horus was the good shepherd. 7 fishers board a boat with Jesus. 7 people board a boat with Horus. Jesus was the lamb. Horus was the lamb. Jesus is identified with a cross. Horus is identified with a cross. Jesus was baptized at 30. Horus was baptized at 30. Jesus was the child of a virgin, Mary. Horus was the child of a virgin, Isis. The birth of Jesus was marked by a star. The birth of Horus was marked by a star. Jesus was child teacher in the temple. Horus was the child teacher in the temple. Jesus had 12 disciples. Horus had 12 followers. Jesus was the morning star. Horus was the morning star. Jesus was the Christ. Horus was the cursed. KRST. Jesus was tempted on a mountain by Satan. Horus was tempted on a mountain by Set. End quote. Devastating indeed. Or at least it would be if these claims were true. Icke seems to believe that they are, having often used them in his stage shows, and having yet, so far as I am aware, to issue any retraction. They have also received wider circulation in Zeitgeist, the movie. They're even cited in Mark Millar's comic book series, The Chosen One. The problem is, though, that they do not seem to have any basis in actual Egyptian mythology. Icke himself cites the source of these devastating comparisons between Horus and Jesus as an author called Albert Churchward, a Freemason who claimed in the 1920s that Jesus didn't actually exist. Churchward's brother James promoted another of the stories that Icke has since championed, the notion of a lost civilization on the sunken continent of Mu. James Churchward claimed to have found proof of this via the Naakal tablets, prehistoric records he had encountered on a trip to India, and which were translated for him by an Indian priest, one of just 3 people who could read this lost language. It's possible that James Churchward got this idea from Madame Blavatsky, who claimed to have discovered a similarly ancient lost text, the stanzas of Xian, on a trip to Tibet. translated for her from the unknown language of Censar by the occult brotherhood. This was then used to inform her book, The Secret Doctrine, which purported to tell us the mystical philosophy of the earliest humans. There is no evidence that the Nakal tablets or the stanzas of Xian or the lost continent of Mu ever existed. The Horus-Jesus comparisons, too, according to Chris White, who has tried unsuccessfully to trace them to an earlier source, appear to be yet another fabrication. Part of Icke's shtick, repeated almost daily, and the aggrieved, martyrly tone he adopts on his Twitter feed, is that he is a fearless, outspoken seeker after truth who has been vilified and marginalized for exposing secrets that our evil, controlling overlords would prefer remained hidden. Well, fine. Nothing wrong with that. But if that is the claim you make for yourself, surely the bare minimum you ought to be able to offer your audience is the guarantee that the truths you are revealing are actually true, and not just yet more of the made-up shit you are continually berating your enemies in the mainstream for producing. This ought to be a sine qua non for any author or public speaker seeking to inform the world about, well, anything really. One of the reasons it took me so long to write my demolition of the climate change industry, watermelons, is because I had to make damn sure that all my claims were properly sourced and accurate. Had I not done so, I would have offered an easy target to that vast, rich, and vindictive climate industrial complex just gagging for an opportunity to embarrass one of its critics. The fact that Icke does not appear to hold himself to the same standards is a red flag for me. Like most truth seekers, I'm genuinely open to the possibility that everything I currently understand about the world and the afterlife may be wrong, up to and including the shape of the planet, or esoteric stuff like soul traps and whether, when you die, you're meant to avoid the light or follow it. Icke, judging by the stridency of his tone, the dogmatism of his assertions, and his ill-disguised impatience with those who don't share his point of view, Christians most especially, appears to think he knows all the answers. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary proofs, and if his sources are as obviously tainted as, say, a pamphlet published in the 1920s by a Freemason with an obvious axe to grind and no evidence to back up his claims, I can't say I'm terribly convinced. In his documentary, Where Does David Icke Get His Ideas?, Chris White gives several other examples of Icke's sketchy sources. The lizard head stuff, for example, appears to have been relayed to him via the testimony of a mind control victim, by definition an unreliable witness, named Arizona Wilder. Some independent confirmation might have been nice, do we not think? David Icke has been right about many things in the past and continues to be so. But this is no reason to give him the free pass he often gets from his cultish acolytes, who appear blind to the possibility that he might be pushing an agenda inimical both to their interests and the cause of truth, not to mention of their immortal soul. Not only is at least some of his research slipshod, but when challenged on detail, he is often evasive and defensive. These are not responses which bespeak honesty and integrity, in my experience at any rate. Researchers promoting a contentious point of view which goes against the grain of mainstream thinking are only too happy to be questioned on their thesis. That's because they are on a mission to explain and elucidate and evangelize. In Icke's defense, it might be argued that he is not a quick-fire intellect, and that his curmudgeonly demeanor is the product of all those wilderness years he spent being dismissed as a tinfoil hat lunatic. But those days are long since past. He has a large, appreciative audience for his books and live events, an internet TV show, Iconic, and the satisfaction of having many of his predictions vindicated by events. at this point, his continued playing of the victim card looks to me, suspiciously, like a passive-aggressive defense mechanism designed to ward off honest criticism. This was certainly my feeling in the aftermath of our live event. The main priority of Icke and his family was not to respond to the criticisms I made, but rather to try to blacken my name as a rude, insensitive, pushing, lying, "You're like Tony Blair, mate," I was told, arriviste who, under false pretenses, had taken cruel advantage of a noble freedom fighter and truth seeker whose boots I was not fit to lick. I'm not buying it. Most especially, I am not buying Icke's spiritual philosophy, which he pretends is antithetical to the binding strictures of religion, but which is clearly just a warmed-over version of the theosophy of Madame Blavatsky and the New Age, which in turn are just an update of the Babylonian mystery religions followed by our ruling elites since the dawn of tyranny. This is why I titled this piece David Icke's Gingerbread Cottage. It's an analogy which I think answers the obvious question. If Icke is really working for the enemy, how come he's been allowed to do so much to expose them? All those bang-on predictions, all those juicy revelations are just the bait. It's Delingpole.substack.com. One of the best voices in the entire truth movement, in my opinion. So check out his Substack, and then check out the BitChute links in the article. So I'm going to take the link to this article, I'll put it in the description of Rumble. Figuring out which truthers are there because they're just seeking the truth, and which truthers are placed there as controlled opposition is quite possibly the main mission of what we're up to. When you first wake up, as I did in late 2016, it still seems inconceivable that this many people in the so-called truth movement are agents of the enemy. And it's impossible to read people's minds. But it is also true that if you wish to, the best way to stop a rebellion is to lead it. The leaders of our rebellion, we have to hope, are truly on our side. But the moment we figure out that they are not, we mustn't hesitate in discarding them. And that's why I appreciate the work of James Delingpole so much. He came to my attention first during ClimateGate, like long time, well over a decade ago, and he just didn't care. He called it man, bear, pig back then. It's very appreciated. All right, let us go ahead and finish up the show, guys. I'm going to do a couple of audio recordings and then possibly get a little bit of sleep. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Remember, I do this show every weekday when I can. Every weekday, and then Saturday and Sunday. I take Fridays off, but then I usually take another day off. I'm not exactly 100% sure what I'm doing right now, but as you know, I got sick for a couple of days. You know, when the temperature fluctuates this much, that's just what happens. But thank you, everybody, for continuing to buy the Angel Paste. We've got some announcements coming up on the Angel Paste front. Also, check out epicthreads.tv. You can buy Threadfest Challenge coins. Those of you who never got a chance to buy a Threadfest Challenge coin, you can do that at threadfest.tv. You can also buy a My Tinfoil Hat Sparkles t-shirt, which my lovely wife Ashley designed. I think you can also buy Angel Paste there. I think we've got it set up so you can buy Angel Paste there. We're going to end up having epicthreads.tv be the one-stop shop for everything Epic Threads, whether it be Angel Paste, whether it be merch, whether it be any other products that we put out in the future. So definitely check out epicthreads.tv. Send feedback about that website to pgunnels@gmail.com if you get a chance to do that. I'd love to hear what you think. It's still in the inception phase, but we want to move past that. So give us a little of your feedback. Purchase some of our merch if you can. Angelpaste.com, promo code Shapiro, another way to support this show. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.